Hello, everybody. Welcome to our online information session for Kilimanjaro. So I'm going to share my screen in a few moments and kind of talk you through what to expect, what it's like on the mountain, and kind of some of the things that you need to think about before you sign up and join one of our Kilimanjaro trips. So let's get down to this. I'm going to share my screen with you and yeah, we'll get going. So just hold tight for 1 second. Okay, here we go. Amazing. So this you can see in the background here is a photo of Kilimanjaro, and this is really the summit crater, and this crater here is called Kibo. So actually Kilimanjaro is a much, much larger mountain, and it has 3 craters, and Kibo is the summit, so it's the highest. And then to the south, you have the southeast. You have Mawenzi, and this is quite a jagged peak. It's also climbable, but it's much more technical. And then to the southwest, you have Shira, which is quite an eroded little ridge line now. So you have 3 kind of craters on Kili, and it's obviously this much larger mountain, but you can see it here in the image. And some of the beautiful things about Kilimanjaro is that actually this is the highest mountain in the entire continent of Africa. It is the highest mountain and the highest volcano, which means that it is a part of the 7 summits and the volcanic 7 summits. So it's a pretty big deal to climb this mountain, but it doesn't mean that it is out of everybody's reach. What's beautiful about this is that this mountain is really open to everybody, all levels of experience, all levels of fitness. It really is quite a fascinating and beautiful mountain because of that reason. It's only a trekking peak. So let me just move through a little bit. So why Kilimanjaro? So it's located in the north of Tanzania, and it straddles Tanzania and Kenya right in the middle, which means that it is actually on the equator. And because it's on the equator, it has a very stable climate. And it's very temperate weather, which means that we can almost climb it the whole year round. Aside from the rainy season, which is normally in end of March, April, and a little bit of May, and then again towards the end of the summer in like September, there's a little bit of a rainy season. But really throughout the entire year, you're able to climb this mountain. And as I mentioned, the weather is very temperate because of that reason. So if we have a look here, Kilimanjaro is the tallest freestanding peak in the world. It's the highest mountain in the African continent. As I just said, it is part of the 7 summits and the volcanic 7 summits, which makes it an iconic peak. It's climbed by more than 30 to 40,000 people each year, and it's a very, very safe mountain to climb. And it's only a trekking peak. So you don't need crampons. You don't need to learn how to walk through snow. You really don't need any other technical equipment because you're just walking, and you're walking up the entire mountain until you get to the summit. So this is why Kili is climbed by so many people and why it's iconic. So here is a map, and this is kind of a map of the, like a bird's eye view of Kilimanjaro. And you can see Uhuru Peak here in the center. This is the crater, and that is at 5,895 meters. So it's quite a high mountain. And I'm just going to take my arrow onto this side. So this is the eastern side of the mountain. And you can see these routes here. This is the western side of the mountain, just here. And the eastern side of the mountain and the western side of the mountain differ a little bit in the actual climb and what you see along the way. So here on the eastern side, so this is going to be the Rongai route. And you're going to see the Marangu Route here. So this is the Marangu Route. And then here we've got on the western side, the two most famous routes, which is the Machame Route. And then I'm just going to show you the Lemosho Route. And then we also have another route that's a little less climbed, which is Shira. And then obviously the Northern Circuit is the last route on Kilimanjaro. So if we look at the Rongai Route and the Marangu Route, so these are the eastern side of the mountain. Remember, I mentioned to you at the very beginning of the presentation that you actually walk past one of the other craters, which is Mwenzi. So Mwenzi is just here. And Mwenzi is about 5,000 meters high. It is one of the 5 highest mountains in Africa. It is a part of Kilimanjaro, but it is its own separate peak. And here, the Marangu Route and the Rongai Route both pass by Mwenzi. Now, the difference between these two routes is that the approach can be a little bit shorter. The way that you climb the mountain, there's less up and down, and it really is just a very gradual walk along the plain. The Marangu Route was one of the first established routes, and it actually has huts. So you've got huts, you can sleep in beds, there's a big dining hall at every camp, and on top of that, there's Wi-Fi and there's toilets, which make it one of the reasons why it's one of the routes that is the most climbed routes on the mountain. Now, if we go over to the western side, Lemosho is a relatively new route. It's about 10 or 15 years old, and it was a route that was kind of devised by the national park to help people with acclimatization. And so it really is a very good route for acclimatization. It's a little bit longer than some of the other routes on the eastern side of the mountain. And the advantage of the Lemosho and the Machame route is that actually when you climb up to the peak, to the crater, you are very, very close. You kind of pop up at Stella Point, which means that you're very, very close to Uhuru Peak, to the summit crater. Whereas when you climb from the eastern side, you're a little bit further away. You actually have to walk, if you can see the arrow on the screen, you walk along the whole kind of ridge of the crater until you get to Uhuru Peak. So it means that at the very summit, this side is a little bit harder, whereas the eastern side is a little bit easier. So they're kind of the different routes on the mountain. Now, if we look at the Lemosho route in particular, this is a little bit of the plan. So obviously on day one, you're going to get picked up from the airport. We drive you to the lodge that we're staying at, and the lodge is really beautiful. It has a swimming pool. Remember that you're at the equator, so the temperature is really lovely all year round. You can wear shorts and t-shirts. The town is in Moshi, so you're also able to explore the little town of Moshi if you arrive early enough. And really day one is about just getting into Tanzania, settling down into the space that you're in, preparing for the climb. So we're going to go through a kit check. We are going to make sure that you have all of the right gear. If you need to hire anything, this is the point that we do that. And then in the evening, we're going to have a welcome dinner. And at the welcome dinner, you'll be introduced to all your guides and you'll get an idea of what the plan is for the following days. So every single evening, our lead guide is going to give you a big, nice brief, and they're going to let you know what time you need to wake up, what you need to wear, where you need to be, and what's going to happen throughout the day. So it's a really lovely way of kind of having an idea of what's coming up. And that will be day one. On day two, we're going to now get into the car after breakfast and we're going to drive to the Kilimanjaro National Park entrance. And this is where all the fun starts. Now, this day can be a little bit tedious because when we arrive at the national park, Depending on the time of year, sometimes there can be hundreds of people there. So we will check everybody into the national park entrance. We will start doing some of the formalities. We check permits. We go through a little bit of admin here. And sometimes, depending on how many people are there as well, we can be here for half an hour, and sometimes we can be here for 2 to 3 hours. So I really implore you to be very patient here. There is a lovely area that you can sit down. There's a few little shops that you can walk around and have a look. But really, this is get to know your team, have a little chat, sit down. Once we get our permits and we're allowed to enter the national park, we'll go through the big Kilimanjaro gates and we will walk through the national park. And we will do about a 3 or 4 hour hike to our first stop, which is the Mukaba stop, and we will stop at those huts, and we're going to move through the rainforest. And the rainforest is really beautiful on Kili. Sometimes you can see the colobus monkeys here. It's a really lovely walk through quite dense forest. So that's going to be day 1 and day 2. We're now going to move into day 3. Now, day 3 is quite a long walk. It is about 8 or 9 hours, and we're walking quite a long distance. And this is probably, in terms of distance, the longest walk. And here we're going to move up to Big Tree Camp, and we're moving to an altitude of 3,700. And towards the end of the walk, we're actually moving out of the rainforest, and we're moving in kind of into the moorlands. So you're going to start to see that the nature around you is changing. You see those big, beautiful, iconic trees that Kilimanjaro is very, very famous for. And we move past Shira, like the Shira crater, and we move into Shira Camp too after we've crossed Big Tree Camp. So it's quite a long day. It's also a very beautiful day because you see that change in the environment. It's very lovely. We are sleeping in tents on the Lemosho Route, so just be really mindful. Day 4, we are going to move from Shira Camp 2 up to Lava Tower. And this is a little bit of a shorter distance than the previous day. We're now on day 4. We're moving to 3,900. So it's only 200 meters in elevation, but we are kind of moving up and then down and then up and then down. And we then move to Marangu Camp. And Marangu Camp is very lovely. You're now a little bit above the clouds. So when we get there, you're going to see the cloud coverage underneath, which is really lovely. Marangu, the next day, so day 5, Marangu to Karanga Camp. Now, this is when we cross over the Marangu wall. So there is a little bit of scrambling here. And it's only a small part. Once we get to the top of the Marangu wall, we've got these amazing views of the entire vista. And this walk is only 4 to 5 hours. Again, today is going to be a little bit up, a little bit down, a little bit up, and a little bit down. And this is why the Lemosho Route is so good for acclimatization, because you're actually moving up and going down and moving up and going down, but then you're sleeping only 100 or 200 meters above the place where you slept the previous night, but you are moving up higher throughout the day. So day 6, we have Karanga Camp to Kosovo Camp. Now, we're really lucky. Most teams stop at Barafu Camp, but we pay a little bit extra and we move a little bit higher on the mountain. And this makes sure that you are in the best possible position for your summit push. So that's moving into Kosovo Camp. Now, what does the summit now look like? Everybody's always really, really nervous when we get to this place, because this is the hardest part of the mountain. And I'm going to be really honest with you. The whole approach on Kilimanjaro is very lovely. It's just a trek. You're going to have an amazing time, but summit night can kick some people's butts. So just be prepared. Now, we leave Kosovo Camp at about 11 p.m., sometimes midnight, sometimes 1 in the morning. And it just depends on, as a team, how quickly you're moving. And from there, we're going to move all the way throughout the night until about 6 in the morning when the sun starts to rise. Now, hopefully by that point, you're very close to Stellar Point. And here is when you turn around, you look back behind you and you see all of the Tanzanian plain. You can see the clouds underneath you. You can see Mwenzi in the distance and the sun just breaking through. Sometimes you can see a little bit of the arc of the earth. It's spectacular. So we always take some time for sunrise. We sit down, have some snacks, and then obviously we keep walking. And depending on where you are, you're going to walk all the way up to Stellar Point, which is only 200 meters away from Uhuru. But again, we take some photos because there's a big, lovely sign there. And then we keep walking to the crater summit, which is Uhuru Peak. And literally once you get onto the crater, it is relatively flat. So you're not walking up anymore, you're walking just along the crater rim. So it's a relatively easy walk, but you do have the altitude to contend with. Now, once we get to the summit, we're going to take lots of photos. We're going to sit down. We're going to have some snacks. We're going to have some tea. Normally, people pull out their flags. They start taking photos and videos. Lots of people get very teary here. So don't be surprised if you shed a little bit of a tear once you get to the summit. But like all things, remember that this is only halfway. And you must come all the way down. And really, for your safety, this day is a big day. We don't go back to Kosovo Camp. We actually walk all the way down to Millennium Camp. So I want you guys all to be very aware that once you get to the summit, you're going to then start coming back down to Kosovo Camp. Now, once we get to Kosovo Camp, this is where you slept. You are going to now change your clothes, do a little bit of a washy-washy, do a wet wipe wash because it can be quite dusty, have some food. The guys are going to prepare some lovely lunch for you. You're going to get cleaned up. You're going to pack everything away. You'll give your big bags to the porters. And then we're going to put on our little backpacks and keep going back down the mountain. And this is probably another 2 to 3 hours until we get to the next camp, which is Millennium Camp. And the reason that we do this is really for your safety. Kilimanjaro is quite a high mountain, and a lot of people can get some just not feeling so great because of the altitude. And so just for your safety, we try and get you down the mountain as quickly as possible so that we mitigate any situations where you might not really feel well. So the quicker we get down, the better people feel. And then Millennium Camp is at 3,900 meters. So normally everybody feels great here. Obviously, you're exhausted because of the summit push, but now Millennium Camp is right in the rainforest again. So it's really lovely to be breathing in that really dense, oxygenated air and be amongst the rainforest. Here we have dinner and we have a really early night's sleep. On day 8, we actually move from Millennium Camp all the way back down to the park entrance. And this is only about 3 hours of a really lovely, gentle walk through the rainforest until we get to the park entrance. Now, when we get to the park gate again, we are going to just check in with the National Park Service, make sure that all of our permits are right. So the park knows that we've left. We get our certificates issued here. And then we all get into the cars. We start having kind of like a big celebration with the team. We say goodbye to the majority of the team, the porters, the cooks, and then we get into our cars and we drive back to the hotel. When we get to the hotel, we're going to check in again. Everybody's going to get given their hotel keys, and then you guys are going to go and have a shower. After you have a shower, you have a rest, you relax, you have a beer in the bar. We're then going to meet for dinner and do our big celebration dinner. And this is where everybody comes together with all their fun stories of Kili, what it was like, what happened. And generally, this is a time that when I'm on the mountain with the team, normally we burst out laughing and we start reminiscing of all the silly things that happened. Everybody who was grumpy on summit night, sharing snacks, like people who were a little bit sick. So we kind of have a laugh and a joke here. And day 9, we say goodbye to Kilimanjaro and to Tanzania. Depending on your flight times, our team is going to pick you up from the hotel and they will start taking you to the airport so you can get on your flights home. So that's a little bit of how it looks. And this is on the Lemosho route. Now, if you're doing the Marangu route, it really is very similar, but you are 1 day shorter. So you're going to summit on day 6 rather than day 7. And remember, I showed you guys the map at the very top. So instead of going on the western side, you're going on the eastern side. So everything is very similar. The differences is the camps have different names. They are actually at very similar altitudes. But obviously on the Marangu route, you guys are going to be in huts, not in tents. And you are going to be in huts and not in tents, and you have Wi-Fi and you have a few other little luxuries. So I'm going to move on to why you should come and climb with us. So obviously Summit Expeditions is a UAE based company, and it is established 4 years ago by mountaineers themselves. So me and Sean are both mountaineers, and we've climbed many, many mountains. You'll see us on some of your trips as well. We try and be there as much as we can. We're not always on the trips. Sometimes you're going to be with our ground support, and sometimes you're going to be with us. And just so you know, we tailor make these experiences. Like I said, I've climbed Kili 6 times now. I've done the volcanic 7 summits, so almost finished the 7 summits. So we really, mountains are in our blood. So we really understand and know the mountains that we're going on. We have vetted the team very, very well. So you are with a very good support team. And unlike some other companies, we make sure that our team is vetted fully, all the way down from the porters, all the way up to the lead guides. And our guides have taken over 300 people to the summit of Kilimanjaro. We've never had any problems. So you really are in the best hands. In addition to that, on summit night, we make sure that you have a 1-to-1 guide ratio. So you have an assistant guide, a lead guide, and everybody is paired with an assistant guide that's going to help you if you need it. Normally on summit night, you may not notice that they're there, but there is a guide that has his eye on you, and he is your kind of assistant guide. And sometimes you'll see them and they grab their bags and they give you tea, and without knowing it, that's your assistant. So we really make sure that everybody's looked after very well. It means that everybody has a chance to make it to the summit. And in case anybody needs to turn around, they are going to turn around with their assistant guide, and their assistant guide is going to take them all the way back to camp. You'll never be left alone on the mountain at any point. And this makes it very unique. I'm going to tell you about one of our experiences a few years ago. Before we established Summit Expeditions, we took a group of people on a charity adventure to Kilimanjaro before Summit, and we went with a different expedition company. And when we got to to Gilman's Point, there were a lot of people in our team who were very tired and who didn't want to continue. And our lead guide said to us, we don't have enough people here. So if you want to go down, everybody has to go down. And we only really have the opportunity to split into 2 teams. So the people who are going to the summit and the people who are going down. There was no ability for some people to keep going to the summit, but to walk a bit slower. And there was no ability for people to turn around at any other point. And so a big portion of that team ended up going down the mountain when actually they could have pushed on if they had their own assistant guide. So this is why when we developed Summit Expeditions, we decided that we wanted to do things a little bit differently, that everybody's paid a lot of money and that they deserve their own summit push. So we've made things on the mountain very different because of this, and because we have this mountaineering experience. And as you'll know, we're not just a company, we really are a community. When you sign up to one of our trips, you're going to join our Summit Expeditions community. You're also going to join your individual WhatsApp group. And this is a place where you have full access to me and to some of our other team. You'll be able to ask us any questions. We will respond as soon as possible. We send over kit videos. So we do obviously an in-person and an online kit check, but we also do video sessions of those. So I send them over to you guys so you can always just pack with me online. We also do this information session. We do a little bit of another information session as we get closer. And these are really informal Zoom sessions where everybody can ask any question that they want, and we really help and support you throughout the journey. In addition to that, we also offer some free trainings in Dubai, obviously weather permitted. So you will have some access to joining some free beach hikes or some running clubs or some hikes around the UAE, and they're all included in your package and complimentary. So we don't run them all the time, but we do offer enough that you get an idea of what to do and how to train. And obviously we'll also host a live training session so everybody understands what they need to do to get fit and ready for the mountain. So these are just some of the little perks that we add onto our trips, so that you feel supported and like you know what's coming up. And this is very different to how some other companies offer their expeditions. Normally, you sign up to a trip and all you need to do is get there. There's no support, there's no help, there's no Zoom sessions, there's no kit checks, there's just nothing. You're really left on your own. So we really do offer something very different for you there, because we want you to be safe and we want you to make it to the summit. So this is a few of the reasons of why you should choose us. So some other things to consider. This is what the peak looks like here on quite a snowy day. So trekking to the summit, although it is open to everybody, and I've seen 10-year-old girls, I've actually taken a 10-year-old girl to the summit of Kilimanjaro, and we've seen people in their 80s climb Kilimanjaro. It is a mountain. And so you must remember that because it's a mountain, things are not always going to go your way. Sometimes it's going to rain on the mountain. Sometimes there'll be a little bit of snow on Kili. The summit approach is difficult, so be prepared to get your butt kicked. The fitter you are, the easier your summit approach is going to be. Now, you don't need to be a marathon runner, but you do need to have in the back of your mind, oh, I need to be relatively fit and healthy. So I want you guys to start thinking about starting to walk around the park every day, maybe carrying 5 kilos with your pack and with your boots, maybe doing some stair sessions, going to the gym a few times a week. So make sure that you don't discard that fitness part. Just because Kilimanjaro is a peak, a trekking peak available to everybody, doesn't mean that you should not train at all. It is a tough mountain. Well, summit night's tough. So just consider that, and consider that you are in a tent. Our team is really, they're amazing, and they will support you in every possible way. But you also need to make sure that you're in good spirits. There was a very famous mountaineer who said, it is not the altitude that matters, it is the attitude. And really that is our ethos. Your attitude on the mountain makes everything different. You can think really positively and you're going to have an amazing time, or you can think really negatively and it's going to be just an awful experience. So just remember that. In Moshi, you're staying in a lodge. So now we're moving on to talking about a little bit of the accommodation. So you're staying in a lodge. Tanzania is a developing country, so sometimes there is power outages. Sometimes there is some water challenges. So just be mindful that it is not Dubai. You cannot click your fingers and something's going to magically turn up in a Uber or in a Uber Eats. So just be mindful of that. The lodges are very beautiful. We carefully select them. We've tried lots of different lodges, but just be mindful of where you are. The other thing is, if you're on the eastern side of the mountains, so Lemosho and Machame, you are going to be in tents the entire way. There is no Wi-Fi, but sometimes you can get signal. And then obviously, if you're on the eastern side of the mountain, which is the Rongai and the Marangu Route, you are going to be in huts. And those huts have toilet facilities. As you get higher up the mountain, the toilet facilities get much more basic. So at the very bottom of the mountain, there's toilets, there's sinks, there's mirrors, and at the top, it literally is just a toilet. So just be very mindful of that as well. That the higher up we go, the more basic the accommodation becomes. But it is still very comfortable. And there is Wi-Fi on the eastern side of the mountain. Sometimes it doesn't work so well, so just be mindful of that too. And then just remember the challenge. So if you have a look here on the presentation, the challenge on this trip is physically moderate. That doesn't mean it's a walk in the park. Reaching the summit of Kilimanjaro is a big undertaking, but it is considered more manageable than the trek to the summit of Elbrus. Hence, you should be physically fit and be able to walk a long distance for several days in a row. So just make sure that that is a consideration there for you. Okay, what's in and what's out? So our trips are fully inclusive, which means that the food and beverages, that your transportation, that accommodation at the beginning and at the end, and then the entire time on the mountain, staff, guides, porters, cooks, assistant guides, everything's been paid for. So that is what is included in your trip. So from the moment you land to the moment you leave, everything is taken care of in our package, so you don't have to pay for anything additionally. Obviously, if you land early and you want to go on an excursion, or if you want to go on a tour, you're more than welcome to. If you stay extra nights, that's obviously not included. And if you want to buy trinkets and souvenirs or anything like that, that's not included too. And some other exclusions is obviously your visa, your air tickets to Tanzania and to Kilimanjaro, and then tips for the guides. So the guides do an incredibly tough and very difficult job taking all of the gear, taking all of you guys up to the mountains. So normally we recommend that you tip about $200 per person. Not to each guide, but that you contribute $200 to a tip pool that we'll all bring together, and we will divide it equally amongst all the people on the mountain. And just to give you an idea of how many people we have with us, the Kilimanjaro National Park Service mandates that we employ 4 people for every 1 person that's on the mountain with us. So for a team of 10 people, including staffs, assistant guides, porters, cooks, we generally have a team of about 50 people in total. So the teams are very, very big. So just really be mindful of that. Okay, and then obviously it's any personal insurance. So that's what's in and what's out. And then the payment. So we allow everybody, and this is split and just done automated, to pay in 4 installments. So your deposit upon registration, and please be mindful that the deposit is non-refundable. And then our second payment, which is due 125 days before the trip departure, and normally that's another 25%. And then our third payment is 90 days before departure, and that is 25%. And then our final payment is due 60 days before departure, and this is the final 25% of the trip. So paying in 4 installments really means that it gives you the flexibility to book the trip and then kind of to sort out all of your other life admin and life stuff along the way without crippling your budget. So we've really made it as easy as possible. You will receive an automated email from We Travel when your payment is due, and all you need to do is click on the link. So for example, if you are doing a trip in the summer of 2025 or 2026 or 2027, you can pay for your deposit now, and then the rest of the payments are not due until 125 days before the trip. So it really gives you a lot of versatility there. Okay. And then the Kilimanjaro kit list. So here is a quick overview of everything that you're going to need on the mountain. Now, remember I said to you that on day one, we do a kit check. So the majority of these items you are able to hire on Kilimanjaro. And what we recommend is that if you are going to do many other mountains after this, that you start purchasing this equipment. But if you're like, Kilimanjaro is one of my bucket list items, I'm never going to climb another mountain after this, then we suggest that you hire the majority of the stuff. And normally we suggest that you hire the outer stuff. So the outer shell, the down jacket, the waterproof stuff, and the base layers and the sleeping bag liner and some of the things that are really close to your body, that those are the things that you purchase, whilst the other outer items you hire from our ground support in Tanzania. Okay, so this is a quick look. Once you sign up to an expedition, we send you a video of this and a PDF of this so you can really follow step by step everything that you're going to need on the mountain. Okay, and then advice on gear. We normally advise everybody to please reach out if you're having any difficulties with gear. If you don't know what to do, please reach out. We've climbed many, many mountains and we can really help you with this. So don't be afraid to touch base if you need any help with that. Okay. And then that's it. So if you're ready to book your adventure to Kilimanjaro, please reach out to us. Our phone number, so this is our website here, summitexped.com. Our email is hello@summitexped.com, and then obviously our phone number is there. So if you have any questions, if you want to have a chat about the trip, then I'm more than welcome to talk you through the entire thing once more. But this is just a really quick overview so you can get an understanding of what it's like to climb Kilimanjaro. And yeah, I hope that you join us on a trip. It's been lovely chatting to you guys, and thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day to watch this video. I hope you have a lovely day, and